Hello, everybody, and welcome to this IOSH webinar on employability and how you can improve it with IOSH member benefits. So my name's Charlotte, and I work in the education engagement team on all things student membership and anyone who's kind of looking to work in occupational safety and health. Um, as people start joining the chat today, I just want to say thanks everyone for joining. I saw a really good mix of student members, members of other grades and non-members in the sign-ups, and also people studying apprenticeships, awarding organisation, qualifications and university degrees as well. And also a hello to any of you who are watching on demand later on. So as you're joining, it would be really good if you could let us know where you're joining from and if you're an IOSH member and perhaps if you're studying or working in health and safety. And while you're doing that, I'm really pleased to be joined by Julianne Shine today. So I'll just hand over to Julianne for an introduction.
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. So my name is Julianne Shine. I am a senior environmental health and safety specialist with Boston Scientific in Clonmel in Ireland. And I'm also a member of the IOSH Future Leaders Steering Committee. So I've worked in the world of EHS for about 6 years now. And prior to that, I would have started off as, I suppose, kind of a volunteer role as a safety representative as well, which is kind of how I got my foot in the door with this profession. Um, so yeah, I've worked in manufacturing industry, in like medical devices, in aerospace. Prior to that, I've worked in a lot of different sort of areas as well. But yeah, it's great to be on this, and I'm sure we'll get stuck into it, and you'll find out a lot more about me as we go along.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing from you and hearing about your experiences. So just to give you an idea of what we'll be covering today, hopefully if you've registered for this event, it means that you want to know more about employability. And we will be asking you to do some polls and interact with us in the webinar. So we'll be covering the definition of employability, and I'll discuss the 4 different elements that make up employability. And throughout, we'll talk about how you can improve yours with IOSH member benefits. Then we'll go over to Julianne to hear about her journey up to this point and her experiences with membership and in the profession. And we've got plenty of time for a Q&A at the end. And please do use the Q&A box. Now, I did see that we had some questions about joining IOSH in the sign-ups process. So I'm just going to put these links in the chat before we start so you can start exploring those if you aren't a current member of IOSH. So before we dive into the definition of employability, I want to start by telling you about a postgraduate student that I used to work with, back when I worked at a university. So this student, she was coming to the end of her studies and she was applying for a lot of different jobs and she kept getting rejections to everything she was applying for. She had really good experience. She was more than qualified, and in her mind, she was extremely employable, but she just could not land a job. She came to me for some advice, and I asked her some questions. You know, I said, what's your approach to choosing which jobs that you apply for? How are you tailoring your CV for each? Have you tried having a mentor? And as I was asking her these questions, I think it slowly dawned on her that she had been trying to do all of this by herself. She had been largely using the same CV and applying in the same way for every job application. And she'd spent so long thinking, you know, oh, I tick all the boxes, that she had assumed that her CV might speak for itself. Um, I told her she needed to improve her employability. And I wonder how many people who are watching this today might relate to this student and might have had a similar experience. So before I tell you the definition of employability, I first want to sort of sense check for attendees to, you know, see what you might think about employability. So I'd be really grateful if you could pop in the chat for us how you view employability or what it brings to mind. And while you're doing that, I'm going to ask Julianne what do you think of when you hear employability, that word?
Um, I suppose it's it's not how, I suppose it's not just on paper how you represent yourself. It's a bit of how you show up day to day, how you show that you're available for opportunities, because for me, I grew on the job and I'm still growing on the job. It's, I think it's about your mindset, your adaptability, because they have to change depending on the work environment you're in. And I think that's how you show off your employability. It's how, to me, it's more about how you grow than about what you think you already know.
I like that, a real growth mindset for it. Yeah, and could that continuing an improvement. Um, and actually, it kind of resonates with what Teresa's put in the chat about being, how capable and confident you might feel. I think confidence is a huge one when it comes to employability. And I know we talk about capability and competence a lot. So I will put you out of your misery. And I have actually given everyone a hard job because there isn't a unanimously accepted definition of employability. So I did trick you all, but there is a good summary, I think, from the Institute of Employment Studies. And most theories of employability to come down to these three things. So it's the ability to gain that initial employment and get on the jobs ladder, the ability to maintain employment and and then keep your job and be successful at work, but also the ability to obtain new employment when you want to move roles. um Having a look in the chat, I've seen someone, Brendan, very employable, and getting stuck at the application stage. So we're definitely going to help you out today. Something I think that's really important about the definition of employability is that, and it's one that people don't always think about, is that we want people to aspire to quality employment. We want people to have good jobs, safe and healthy jobs, and you all deserve that. So I think that's something really important to point out because quite often when I ask people about employability, they don't always identify, that quality aspect. Um, and you might be forgiven for thinking that employability is a recent concept because I certainly can't go a week without hearing about it at the moment. That's probably because of my line of work. But the word has actually been around since about the 1880s, and we started using it more in the way that we do today in the 1990s. And referring to my story that I told earlier, I did get used to hearing it a lot more when I worked at a university where it became more common for us to help students to become more employable. But I actually think some of the growth and popularity really has been a result of the kind of current workplace and the overall world landscape we find ourselves in and how it's fueling us to want to have better employability. Um, you will probably hear more that we are going to be having less linear careers, less job security, and less lifetime careers than previous generations. And I quite often hear people describing squiggly careers or rock climbing wall careers, where you might take sideways, diagonal, or even downwards moves strategically according to what you're doing, in the world of work or in your personal life. But there's also the fact that a lot of the jobs that exist today didn't exist a long time ago, or even recently. And so people are trying to almost project what kinds of jobs and what levels of work might exist in the future. We've got a less dependable labour market. So I think employability helps us to be more mobile in an uncertain jobs market. Um, I do think, however, there are some limitations that we need to address with employability because I think the focus really gets put on the individual, which isn't always fair, and it can suggest that employability is always down to the individual, and that if you aren't employable, that is why you haven't got a job. But actually, there are plenty of structural problems that can cause unemployment. And I think if we try and suggest it's always down to the individual, then that's quite a harmful thing to do. So, with that in mind, I do want to point out the limitations, but with that in mind, we will have a look at employability. And I have seen this work in action with individuals. So hopefully there'll be something that you can all learn from today. So without further ado, we're going to dive into the four elements of employability, which we've been teasing for so long. So What makes up an individual's employability? Here they are, and I'll take you through each one. So the first one, which many people are comfortable with, is their knowledge, skills, and behaviours that you possess, quite often learned through things like qualifications and experience. The second is the way that you navigate the jobs market. We then have how you communicate that knowledge, skills, and behaviours to employers and recruiting managers. And finally, an important one that we'll touch on is personal circumstances as well. So we're going to start with the knowledge, skills, and behaviours. And these really are those kind of core competencies that you need to perform your role successfully. So the first one is knowledge, and that's about what you know. So in the world of health and safety, it might be technical health and safety knowledge or knowledge of a particular industry. We've then got skills, and this is more about what you can do. In OSH, this could be things like risk assessments, communicating with stakeholders, or writing reports. Lots of different skills, lots of different jobs. And finally, we've got behaviors, and this is all about how you act. And these might be personal attributes such as integrity, reliability, empathy. And all of these knowledge, skills, and behaviors really make up the core of your employability. If you haven't got these, you probably can't secure a job that you want, especially in health and safety. You can't lie on your CV and pretend to have knowledge you don't have. I strongly discourage it. So really, I would like to know from you. We're going to run a poll. I want to see how confident you are in your knowledge, skills, and behaviors, because these really are at the core. So it's about what you know, what you can do, and how you act. And while you're doing that, I'm going to ask Julianne if she's got anything. Is there anything that you're sort of focusing on in your CPD at the moment around these areas?
Yeah, I think for me, because of where I am right now in my career as well, like I'm at a senior level, I'm kind of moving towards a management level eventually. So that's what I'm trying to focus on in CPD is like my leadership, my influencing skills as well. Um, yeah,
Definitely.
because the knowledge, the technical side of it, that's the core. That's what you'll build when you start out. And as important as it is, behaviors is a huge part of it.
Mm.
So trying to have that leadership, the influencing skills is a big part of it. Anyone who currently works in health and safety or has some sort of experience in it, you need a lot of influencing power. So they're the areas I'm trying to put a lot of focus into with my CPD and my blueprint.
Oh, that's really good to hear. Yeah, I think influencing is one that that can feel really difficult, especially for those that are starting out in the profession, building that confidence. And we do get a lot of student members who want more help around becoming the trusted advisor and becoming the person that people can rely on. So, um, yeah, it's really interesting to hear the different things that people are working on. And hopefully we'll see from this poll in a minute. How confident people are across those different areas. Okay, that's good. Oh, we've got quite a good spread here. We've got a lot of more than I expected in the confident category, which is a testament to how hard you're all working. And then we've got some areas that people want to work on, which is understandable. And I think for those people that are really confident in those areas, you might think, well, I'm guaranteed to get the job that I want because I'm very confident across these core areas. But if only it was that simple. We will have a little bit of a look later on at how you might be able to have all the right knowledge, skills, and behaviors, but maybe not be able to land the job. Um, you need to be able to communicate them, and that's what we'll talk about. But for those of you who have got some areas to work on, I'll just take you through how IOSH membership can help you work on those areas. The first thing to point out, which Julianne mentioned, is we'll talk about Blueprint in a moment. So at IOSH, we have a competency framework that covers technical, core, and behavioral skills. You can see that there's a top 3 levels, 12 subcategories, and they cover a total of 69 different individual skills. This could be anything from things like risk management to fire safety or even business and leadership skills. And this is really helpful because it can give you an understanding of what the expectations are for working in the health and safety profession. And to help you with the competency framework, we give all members access to Blueprint, which is our continuing professional development platform. And it's an exclusive platform for members where you can test yourself against the framework and then select a few key areas each year to work on in your own personalized development plan. And from there, you have access to the Blueprint library, which gives you suggested resources to improve your skills, including things like IOSH technical guides, like the one you can see on the right there. There's over 1,300 hours of learning resources on there that you get with your membership, but there's a lot of other kinds of learning available at IOSH. So we run things like regular webinars, industry events, and CPD workshops. So if you're someone who learns better through, listening or watching videos, there's lots of different formats available. So this might be useful if you're looking to develop certain knowledge, skills, or behaviors. I know a few of you mentioned that you were looking at certain areas to improve. Obviously, if you're a student member and you're studying, you'll be getting a lot of that knowledge from your qualification. So this can kind of complement that nicely. So you've got to the point that you're confident with your knowledge, skills, and behaviors. And now you need to find a job to apply to. And to do that, you have to use a different kind of skill that is not exclusive to health and safety, and that is career management skills, so that you can navigate the jobs market. So the first skill that you'll need is self-awareness. And this is one where people really fall down on this. Do we know what kind of job is going to fulfill us? Do we know if we want to work in a team or if we absolutely do not want to work in a team? Do we know what kinds of activities we want to do? And I think with self awareness, you're more likely to end up in a job that you actually like. I've worked with so many people who have ended up going for the first job that they get offered, and they haven't really taken that time to reflect and say, is this going to be a job that I enjoy? So I do want to test how self aware you are. So I am just going to ask you to answer this next poll on whether you know what you want from a job or not. This is always a really telling question. Um, Julianne, how do you feel? How self-aware are you?
Now, I am, but yeah, when I was first going for the jobs, no, I wasn't. Because I've bounced around. I've done lots of different jobs, and lots of different jobs before I ever came to health and safety. So it's not something I was self-aware about. I'm looking at it from the other side of the coin. I mean, it was probably a benefit to me because I ended up where I am now, found my way eventually. But yeah, I went through a lot of hairy moments, I think I could say. Um, Jobs I didn't like, exactly what you said there. Do you know if you like to work alone or part of a team? I worked part of a team, thought I'd like working alone, and I did that, and I hated it, and I had to come back and find a team. So it's when you're not self-aware and you're trying to figure it out as you go, it can be very tricky. And it can be hard. It can, unfortunately, it takes people sometimes years to figure it out.
I agree. And sometimes we have situations put upon us, like global pandemics, where we suddenly go, oh, I hate
Yeah.
this way of working, but there is no other way of working at the moment. So, yeah, self-awareness is a tricky one. And we'll see what people have said from the poll. Um, in terms of their levels of confidence. Oh, we've got some self-assured people on the call
Yeah.
today, people who are confident that they know that what they want from a job, which is really good to see. Um, but we do have some people who are not so sure or who are somewhere in the middle. And for those of you who are unsure, we'll talk in a minute about how you might be able to improve your self-awareness. Beyond self awareness, we also have opportunity awareness and job searching skills. So, do we know what kinds of jobs are actually available in the occupation that we're interested in? Do we know what requirements they have? Are we confident that we know where the jobs are being advertised, how we find them? Do we know what job sites, how to network, and what social media is available, that might be able to help us with that? And then the final skill we've got in this section is decision making skills. So this might be deciding what to apply to, being strategic in our approach, not just applying for every single job that we see that we might be able to do, but actually being tactical in what we apply to and putting our full effort into those applications. And your IOSH membership can help you with navigating the jobs market. So IOSH gives you access to a members only platform called the Career Hub. And on here, you can take self-assessment quizzes to learn more about your career motivations or what you want from work, or what motivates you, maybe even your temperament. And this is really helpful for maybe those people who are not confident yet in what their personality might be at work or what they might want from work. Um, so I highly recommend this area. I personally like the personality insight one. I felt very seen when I took that quiz. But there's also lots of e-learning available on how to develop things like a job hunting strategy, how to improve your personal network, and there's new content being put on there every week. I think the Career Hub is one of our IOSH member benefits that more people should access, and the people that do access it, I see the monthly users and the ones that start accessing it continue to access it. So this is a really great member benefit, especially for this sort of job hunting stage. We also have a bespoke job site, IOSH Jobs, where you can read advice articles and you can apply for jobs at different membership levels. And I personally really like the advice articles that are available on there. It's done by the same people who run IOSH magazine, and they often have member interviews and different advice articles around maybe career changing or moving into health and safety. Because it's sometimes not about what you know, but it's about who you know. At IOSH, we have around 50,000 members and many different groups that are known as IOSH communities. So we've got regional communities that are across the world, from the UK to the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and the Caribbean, but we also have industry specific communities as well, such as aviation or theatre. And this is a really great way to build your professional network. There's a full list of communities on our website if you'd like to know more. And building your professional network is a really essential way to improve that opportunity awareness that we talked about earlier. You're far more likely to see jobs, adverts, etc., opportunities that people are interacting with on LinkedIn. And there's a lot of kind of networking that takes place on LinkedIn. But the communities also put on bespoke careers events as well, such as this one that the Manchester and Northwest community in the UK put on. And that was really looking at careers in health and safety and helping people to get in. And I know that Julianne's going to talk a little bit later about the Future Leaders community as well, which is for new and aspiring OSH professionals. So you're confident with your knowledge, your skills, and your behaviours. You've found jobs that you want to apply to. As mentioned earlier, you might have all of the knowledge, skills, and behaviors that you need for a job, but if you cannot communicate them during the job hunting, the job application process, then no amount of qualifications and experience will save you. So there are several moments in the recruitment process where you'll be asked to communicate your knowledge, skills, and behaviors. And the first is with documents. So this could be things like your CV or a resume, a covering letter, or even a portfolio, as well as references from people that you've worked with before. The second kind of communication is through qualifications and certifications. And this is a more formal way of communicating to an employer the knowledge that you've acquired formally through academic, vocational, or accredited prior learning. But equally, if you've got IOSH membership at technical level or above, then you'll have post-nominal letters like Tech IOSH, Cert IOSH, Chartered member, and this will communicate that you've got a qualification, years of experience, and that also you're committing yourself to 30 hours of CPD every year. So these kind of qualifications and certifications are already communicating for you during the job application process. And then the final and the scariest way that you communicate during the job process, the recruitment process, sorry, is in person, presenting yourself. And this might be through your interview technique, it could be how you interact with the company on the phone, or equally, it could be emails. And then if you get asked to do things on the day, like deliver a presentation or go and talk to different teams, you're always communicating, your knowledge, skills, and behaviors, and you're demonstrating them during those moments. And if you can't prove via these key communication areas that you have what they're looking for, then it does not matter if you're the most qualified person in the world, because they just won't be able to hire you. So, with that in mind, I'd like to run another poll to see how confident you are in your communication skills during the recruitment process. And while you're doing that, I'm going to ask Julianne about her experience with communication skills. Um, have you, do you feel you're a confident communicator, especially in this stage of recruitment?
I think I am now. Again, it's gotten better over time. Like I think back to my first interview for a health and safety job, and I I didn't feel like I had the right qualifications. I suppose felt a bit unsure, kind of that imposter syndrome, but I was able to present myself well. I was able to talk through it well and show I had that interest, show I had the confidence, and thankfully it got me the job. But I've also been on the flip side. I've been involved in interviews where I've interviewed people for health and safety jobs, and it's exactly like you said. I have one in mind with we were down to two candidates, and one had a stronger CV than the other, but they couldn't communicate and they couldn't present themselves and they couldn't talk to it. And then we had someone who had a slightly weaker CV in terms of experience, in terms of knowledge, but they presented themselves so well and were so well able to communicate it, able to talk about things, and you feel more confident with them. You have more
Mm.
trust in that person. And ultimately, we end up hiring the person with less experience because their communication skills were so much better.
Yeah, that's a really good insight. And I think you've touched on something that at least the students I've worked with before have really struggled with. They might get really confident with the documentation side of applications, but then when they hit that presenting themselves side, they really hit a wall. And I think feel that discomfort. It is an unfamiliar environment. It doesn't come naturally. And I think that if anyone on the call is feeling that at any point during the recruitment process, that is a clear indication of this might be an area that you want to work on. So let's have a look at the poll results and see how people feel about their communication skills during this point. That's good. We've got a very and somewhat confident bunch on the call, which is helpful because, as we mentioned earlier, this part of the recruitment process is key. And without being able to communicate well, that is essentially going to, like hamper your success. Um, Anyone who's watching it that's somewhat confident or who maybe watches on demand who wants a bit more help in this area, I will just give you some examples of how you can use your IOSH membership to support you. So the first thing we have is IOSH mentoring. And if you've never tried mentoring before, it's essentially where you get paired up with someone who is more senior than you, in normally in the same profession as you or maybe similar. And they can help you to develop some areas that you've identified where you need help. So, for example, with the IOSH mentoring platform, you choose different competencies that you want support with, and then that will help you get paired with someone who's happy to support you with those skills. It is entirely free with your membership, and it's really good if you're someone who likes guidance or more specific hands-on support. And I highly recommend it as someone who's both been a mentor and has been mentored. I think it's one of the most powerful ways to get out of your comfort zone and to get that hands-on guidance. If you want to know more about IOSH mentoring, we have a webpage dedicated to it, and there's loads of videos on our YouTube channel about how to make the most of mentoring. So I highly recommend that you check those out. And then just to go back to the Career Hub again, there's so many different e-learning resources on there about how to do things like put together job applications and documents, how to build a CV, but there's also things around successful interviews, how to, answer different types of interview questions. And there's an interactive mock interview simulator as well, which again can feel very awkward, but that probably means that it's an area that you want to work on. And if you're feeling really brave, when you first log on to the Career Hub, there is a pop-up that is called the Career Pulse. And this is a self-assessment tool where you answer some quick fire questions to rate yourself from 1 to 10 across different areas. It's really quick. And what it does is it gives you a report afterwards, and it will show you the different areas that you might wish to improve. So you can see my one here. It's suggesting that I have a look at career possibilities and decisions, interviews and offers, and CVs and applications as well. And what's really interesting for me at IOSH HQ is behind the scenes to be able to see trends within our membership, to see, which areas they might want to be working on, and it helps us to pick and pitch content to you in the future. So it's a really, it's only a quick survey, but it does really focus you on those different areas that you might want to improve. So a last area of employability is personal circumstances. And this is one that I think people might either forget or take for granted when we've talked about all those other areas. Because the ability to put everything we've talked about into practice is one thing, but the approach that you take and the decisions that you make is entirely going to depend on those internal and external circumstances and the interrelationship between the two of them. So it's all well and good to say, well, I have this experience and this qualification, and so that means I should be going for a manager level role. But if you have things that are going on outside of your work, then that might not be feasible for you. So, some examples of personal circumstances that might impact your decisions might include things like caring or parental responsibilities, could be disability or long-term health conditions, could even be where you live, your marital and family status. And there's so many different circumstances that will affect an individual's ability to seek different opportunities. And this will vary across your life as well. This will always be changing. Some people might want to deliberately not take on higher level roles, and equally, other people will be forced to take on roles that, might be longer hours than they want, but they need the pay. But there's also those external factors as well. And these could include things like conditions in the labour market, like we talked about earlier. It could also be things like demands in certain industries. For example, in the UK, we've got a real focus on health, social care, and construction at the moment. But there's also things like governmental changes, like what we saw in the USA earlier this year with OSHA, and of course, global events, global unprecedented events like pandemics. So, when applying for jobs, it's always really important to be mindful of the things that are completely non negotiable for you. And remember to not compare yourself to others, which is really difficult at times. As someone with long term health conditions, I can say I'd like to not compare myself to others, but I do. And I know that the common phrase comparison is the thief of joy is something that I always try and bear in mind. But with that said, I will tell you now how IOSH membership can help with personal circumstances. So, if you're looking to move to a higher level of membership to help with your career advancement, we have things like reasonable adjustments in place to be able to get you from one level of membership to another. But we also have concessionary fees or discounted fees, which means that if you're going through something like ill health or unemployment, then you would be able to get a discounted, a reduced membership rate. This is really helpful, I think, and it's something that people don't always realize that we do. We also have the IOSH Benevolent Fund, which is where members of over 1 year and former members can apply for support during times of financial hardship. And if you're a student member, then next week, I'm really pleased to say that we'll be launching our annual student member bursary, where you can apply for up to £250 towards your studies, career, and development. And you can find out more about that by Googling IOSH Student Bursary. And then finally, I think it's really important to have a support network when you're going through different aspects of life that might be impacting your employment. And many IOSH members find this in those IOSH communities that I talked about earlier. So our global communities are a really good place to make lifelong friends. And the image on the right there is, a Future Leaders podcast that was produced about OSH careers, stories, and strategies. And there's all kinds of supportive networks available for you. So, with that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Julianne, who is going to talk a little bit about her journey from student member to certified member of IOSH and her role in the Future Leaders community and beyond. So, I'll hand over to Julianne.
Yeah, thank you, Charlotte. I'll just say apologies straight off the bat because I have a cough at the moment, so I might mute myself every now and again. Um, but yeah, I'll share a bit about my journey. I suppose how I got started in safety, I suppose what employability means to me, how it's kind of showed up along the way and what I've taken from that. So I'll be honest, my path into occupational health and safety or environmental health and safety, it was anything but planned. It wasn't it I was going to say it wasn't my first choice in college. It actually wasn't even on the cards in college. I had never looked at health and safety initially. Um, but I ended up in a program that just wasn't the right fit for me. And I ended up after a year stepping away from that, which at the time felt like a bit of a setback. But looking back, it's probably one of the best decisions and one of the first lessons I've gotten in employability as well. Knowing that something isn't right and, having the courage to maybe go and change that direction as well. But over the years, I tried a bit of everything. I worked in retail, in call centers, in nurseries, everything. Um, and I suppose I didn't realize it then, but every job has taught me something along the way. They've all taught me soft skills that would later become very valuable in the safety field. Dealing with people, trying to stay calm under pressure, resiliency, all of these things are key in the health and safety world. Um, Meeting deadlines, clear communication as well. We talked about earlier. These are all key areas that you need to focus on. And thankfully, all of those jobs taught me a little bit of that. So I suppose those early experiences they shaped the professional that I've become today. Even before I ever heard the word employability or really knew what it meant. And I eventually ended up joining Boston Scientific, who I'm still currently with. I joined them as a product builder, and while working on the line, took up a voluntary role as a safety representative. And I suppose that was the turning point. That's where I realized that's when my self-awareness started to kick in a little bit. That's when I realized this is the area that I'm really starting to like. That was the turning point, and it gave me a voice. I got into safety meetings. I started raising ideas, um, and I suppose most importantly, I started helping people, and I started to see how even the small things, little small actions you might do, they can improve the safety of people that you're working with. So an internal role came up in Boston, and I do remember doubting myself quite a bit because I had no formal safety qualifications at the time, just a small bit of training here and there. But I decided to go for it anyway. And in my interview, even though I couldn't talk about, big qualifications, big level 8 degrees, or anything like that, I could talk about all the small things I had done, those small issues I had seen as a safety rep, the initiative I took, the support I gave to teams, the changes, as small as they might be, that I tried to make. And having that confidence and being able to communicate that was enough to get me the job. And that's where my career really started with health and safety. So I suppose that first role taught me that employability is as important as it is to tick every box. I was lucky enough I didn't have to tick them all. Showing that you're willing to learn. I didn't have everything ticked in the knowledge box, but my showing my willingness to learn there, I threw myself into it. I went back to college while I was doing the course. So working during the day, doing college in the evenings. Um, and I suppose I grew quite a bit in that role as well. Um, and I guess after a few years, I got a bit of an itch. I wanted to kind of learn a bit more again. So went back to college again for a second time. So I've completed a level 8 in occupational health and safety management. I'm currently studying for a master's in environmental health and safety management again. So I have 6 months left in that course. Um, so I didn't think I'd be back in college for a third time, but I actually spoke about it today with someone. I said, I'm not going back again, but in another 2 or 3 years, I could go back again. I could do something else in health and safety. Because when you actually find that career that you like, it's hard not to keep studying because it's constantly changing. Um, so yeah, with IOSH, I suppose I joined as a student member when I was first doing the level 8. It was actually kind of similar to this, a webinar. We actually had somebody come to one of our courses and speak to us at just before one of our lectures started, and told us all about the benefits of IOSH, told us about all the career hub, all the different areas that we could get involved with it. And I joined pretty much straight away. I think by the end of that week, I was a member of IOSH, a student member, and it was probably one of the best decisions I could have done for my professional development as well. Because as a student member, I was using the career hub constantly, and that did help me identify the skills that employers would need, the skills that maybe I need to improve on as well. Um, Interview advice, because I did eventually change roles. I went to a health and safety role in a different company, and luckily enough, I managed to get back to where I started in the same company again, but just in a more senior position. So the career hub is brilliant to use for those areas. And then as late as this year, January 2025, I joined the IOSH Future Leaders Steering Committee. And this is probably one of the most exciting areas I've gotten involved in with IOSH as well. Um, Again, as self-aware as I am, I was quite nervous when that started and that came up and the opportunity came in to join it because I knew it was a year and a half. It was 18 months, I suppose a stint that we have to do with it. So I'm luckily a part of the IOSH Future Leaders Committee until next year. Um, but that move challenged me massively. A new responsibility along with my college, along with my work as it is at the moment. But I've gotten so many experiences with that, and you can see from the slide here, I managed to get over to Birmingham earlier this year. I think that was back in March of this year. And I got to present on stage with Kelly Nicholl, our IOSH president, and Sarah Newton, the chair of the HSE. So that was a kind of a pinch me moment as well. One of the first things I got to do as part of the Future Leaders community, and we were on stage having a discussion around IOSH and HSE and how we can work together, the different areas that are a challenge for the HSE at the moment and for IOSH. And since then, it's come tenfold. I've been involved in different seminars. I've been involved in a podcast as well recently that came out at the start of this week with a fellow Future Leaders member as well. And it's all tied together quite nicely because in the podcast and in the video that came out and this current webinar, the communication, what I'm telling you is it's all quite similar. Um, it's about, I suppose, my journey into IOSH or my journey into the career in OSH. I suppose the areas that I think are key for people to be looking at in your studies and everything. Um, it's all just hitting at the moment, which is fantastic. So I suppose looking back, I can see, like I said, that every stage of my career, even the uncertain ones, that the jobs I wasn't too sure of, they all add that layer of employability, or add a layer to my employability at least. Um, Leaving that first course, it taught me resilience. Um, Taking on that safety representative role, it taught me initiative. Applying for the job that I wasn't sure I was going to get taught me courage. Um, and studying while working taught me discipline. So, every small step you take that's over 6 years I've been doing all this, there's always room to evolve, always room to learn. Um, and then joining the Future Leaders community, the importance of networking and lifelong learning, it's amazing. I've met some amazing people throughout the journey. Some lifelong friends definitely from doing it. And it's a career I would, if there's anyone on the call would say that maybe is thinking of joining IOSH as a student member or thinking of maybe getting into the career, it's one I would definitely recommend. Because even though my path is not linear, it's definitely been a, a wealthy journey, I would say, for me personally, in my development. There's so many areas of IOSH to get involved in. No matter what company you can think of off the top of your head, there is some sort of a job in there for health and safety. Um, Construction, manufacturing, anywhere you want to go, there is elements to it that you can work on. Auditing is the area that I have a huge love in, even though people might shy away from it, because it gives me a full oversight and a full view of what goes on in companies and how to learn how things work, what the culture is like. All these areas are brilliant, but I would recommend absolutely that you join IOSH if you haven't already. Um, that you definitely use the Career Hub and get using CPD resources as well. Blueprint has been fantastic to me as well. I've redone my assessment a couple of times. Every year I get curious to see has anything changed, or is there areas that I've actually dropped in that I might need to improve, because that can happen too. If you kind of focus too much on one area and forget about the others, you can sometimes lose that little balance. So I have redone my blueprint a few times just to see where I'm at. And mentoring as well. I did join, sorry, I was a mentee with IOSH. I have recently registered as a mentor with IOSH as well. So, these are all things that I would recommend. They're amazing benefits to use as part of your membership, and I would recommend everyone to get out there and start using them as well. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I don't think I could have put it better myself. And I really loved your point around self-awareness, because I think there's such a difference between someone who is maybe speculative about health and safety or looking around or trying to develop, someone who has a clear plan and who knows what they want to improve and work on and where they want to get. It's so different compared to someone who is maybe just not sure. They're kind of loosely networking, looking around, and they don't, it doesn't don't come across as much, as being driven or being directed, and it can be a lot harder to help someone when they aren't really sure what they want themselves. So I've definitely written down a few points from your talk, and also the courage to change direction I wrote down. I really enjoyed that as a phrase, because I think it can feel quite scary, but that's going to become so, or is, and is going to become so much more common, I think, in the world of work.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree. It's at the time when it's happening, it feels like everything's going wrong. You feel deflated, but when you look back, as I say, I didn't have the self-awareness at the time, really, but when you look back on it and you think, actually, no, it's one of the best decisions I could have ever made. At the
Yeah.
time, you don't think you're courageous. At the time, you're thinking something different. But yeah, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, very scary, but very worth it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that we'll have some questions for you in the Q&A. We're gonna pause here and take some time for questions. Obviously one of the benefits of having these sessions is that we get to hear from members and non-members alike. So I'll have a look at some of the questions that are coming in. And while I do that, I thought I'd kick off, Julianne, with a question that people love to talk about. What do you think is maybe an underrated skill in health and safety that people could look into developing more? We're kind of leaning into that knowledge, skills, and behaviors part of employability.
So yeah, I'm constantly saying that it's the key is communication and influence. I think it's probably an obvious one. Um, People hear it a lot, but having that skill of communication, as we say in Ireland, is the gift of the gab. If you're able to talk and you're able to interact with people in a meaningful way, a relatable way, that drives change so much more than you would realize. Um, and we try and encourage that the whole time in our company as well, with like senior management and directors and people like that. Go have a chat with people, don't go in there like a boss and try and be an auditor or something like that. Just go and talk to people, have a normal conversation, and you learn so much more. You become so much more relatable. People they want to listen to you, they want to work with you. They're they're amazing, I think, because we hear a lot about at the moment, well-being, psychological safety. They're areas that there's a lot of focus on at the moment. The mental health side of it. And if you can have somebody who's more senior and that you're not afraid to approach them, and they can just have that conversation with you, it makes it a much safer environment for people to talk about that.
Mm. Yeah, it's a really important skill. And if I was to throw one in, it would definitely be around digital literacy because and that's probably not health and safety specific, but we talk about large issues and topics like AI and big
Hmm.
tech, but actually the amount of professionals across many industries that don't know advanced features of most of our Microsoft Office software or anything, I think it's really important to sort of keep developing in that area. Um, so I've had a look at the Q&A, and the first question that I think we should answer is for Brenda, who's working as a healthcare assistant, who's actually studying safety, health, and welfare at work at University College Cork, and really wants to break into the industry and get hands-on experience. Um, and that often employers often want experience more than qualifications, and that sometimes they can feel a bit stuck. So I will just put something in the chat, which is a previous webinar that we did on how to get work experience in health and safety in case it is of benefit to you. We did a lot of practical steps around something you alluded to, Julianne, about like becoming a safety rep or like getting different kinds of experience. But have you got any advice, Julianne, that you'd like to give to Brenda before I offer some more?
Yeah, no, like I spoke about all those things. That this is where even the likes of being with IOSH and doing the volunteering with IOSH and places like that is really beneficial as well. Um, because I know in England IOSH is quite well known, but in Ireland it's actually not. And it's something that companies look for quite a bit in Ireland, is that you're a certified member of IOSH or even a chartered member as you go up into more senior roles. But not a lot of people are members from my experience dealing with people in different companies around Ireland. So it's nearly like a luxury to have membership with IOSH as well when you go looking for jobs in Ireland. That's one great thing I think that would be in lieu of hands-on experience is just having that membership because you're learning so much that way as well. Even though you're not necessarily putting it into practice, you're attending webinars, you're attending the seminars, you're hearing everyone else's stories, you're learning through it that way, even though you might not think you are still learning. So it is still an area for a lot of experience. It's something I look for when I'm interviewing people as well. If people know about IOSH and they're able to demonstrate that they attend all of these events, um, I see that as a big bonus as well for when I'm doing the interviews.
Mm. I completely agree. And I think as well, I've often seen people limit themselves just through their job search. So people will only be looking for very, very specific health and safety coordinator, health and safety assistant. And by narrowing the search a lot, you might miss out on what you might call a stepping stone role, where you
Yeah.
can actually sidestep into health and safety more easily from that role. So things like facilities, administration, we've talked about auditing, manufacturing. There are roles that require health and safety as part of the role, but they aren't pure health and safety roles. And so try and make sure to not limit your job search too much, because many people find benefits in a stepping stone role to help them start to get experience in health and safety so that they can then fully sort of specialize in health and safety beyond that. Um, so we've got a few more questions that have come in the chat and in the Q&A box. So I'll just have a look across both. We've got a question around some common mistakes that people make when applying for health and safety roles and how to avoid them. That's a very good question. Julianne, obviously you recruit people, so you'll
Hmm.
have some idea. I will throw mine in from a CV perspective,
Yeah.
not writing the name of the organization that you worked for or even the dates that you worked for them. And even on occasion, I've seen people not even list the job title that they were working as. So I think communicating poorly in application documents, that's not exclusive to health and safety, but it is a common pitfall. How about you?
Yeah. I've seen a lot of different CVs and they're like night and day sometimes. So yeah, exactly like you said, not listing where you've worked or anything like that. Um, Sometimes what I find people think if they've maybe taken a break and they haven't worked for a while, or they see a gap in their CV, they panic and they try and fill it with something. You don't need to. Just it's okay to say there's a gap in your CV. Don't worry about trying to fill that up or fluff it up, or definitely don't lie in your CV as well. Because unfortunately you do get caught out on those things. Um, but sometimes if people's experience isn't great, and I have experienced this myself as well, if they're applying for a role that, and this might even go back to Brenda's one as well, if you're applying for a role and you think, I don't have the experience, or maybe I'm chancing my arm here with this role and it's an environmental role, but my experience is all health and safety or something like that, and you try and write your CV to match the job, it won't work out for you in the end because like I said, you kind of get caught out on that one as well. Just to be honest about it, if you're experienced in risk assessment, you can write an entire CV about risk assessment, but you can try and tailor it. You can say you've got experience in auditing, because that's what risk assessment is. It's auditing the areas. It's hands-on experience. It's um, digital experience. It's working with Excel, working with Word. You can think of one task maybe in health and safety that you're really good at, and then think of all the other elements that come into it. So at risk assessments, you've got technical experience, behavioral experience because you have to talk to people and you have to deal with them, your communications. So you just need to try and think of one topic that maybe you're really good at, and then try and think of all the other behavior, the KSBs, the knowledge, skills, and behaviors that tie to that one task. Try to write your
Yeah.
CV to that one, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very easy to tailor a CV and then it very quickly not become your own anymore. And it's happening even more now with people using AI, I think, to tailor their CVs. It's not really something we've touched on today because we've gone very sort of like top level with it. But I will say that a common pitfall at the moment for recruiters is that they are receiving I think I've seen it referred to as an ocean of similarity or a tsunami of sameness. Everything is coming across the same. And so that's another common pitfall. I will put a link in the chat that I think a very good guide to the right way to use generative AI in job applications because it can actually hamper your chances, I think.
hmm Yeah. I looked at a CV recently and it was they had written it to match the job description, which is okay, but I was highlighting the same words over and over again. So I was seeing the exact same experience go through each line, and you could tell it was probably written with AI, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very, very classic. And the final question we'll take is a question about the vast array of qualifications that exist and knowing how to pick the right qualifications across a number of qualification providers. And that is a very difficult question. I will say it's one that is very helpful to work with a mentor on. But Julianne, have you got anything you'd like to say around career direction and picking the qualification that might be right for you?
Yeah, we have the luxury of it here in Ireland of having so many different institutes and providers of courses, of level 8 courses, of master courses. Um, the first one I did was a level 6, which I think was 12 weeks. It was nice and short, but it was rounded. It gave me a view of everything in the occupational health and safety side of it. So you kind of got a short snippet each, probably one day a week for 12 weeks. So it was maybe like fire safety this week, chemical next week, maybe touch a little bit environmental the next week. So the fact it was nice and short, that helped me decide actually it's the occupational side I need to go. So I did that short 12-week course, and then the next year, then when September came around and I registered for a course, I did the exact same one that Brenda's doing, the safety, health and welfare at work, HDIP and UCC. That's what I went for then in the following year because it was very health and safety focused. Um, very risk assessment focused, very legislatively focused. But I wouldn't have known what to do unless I had done that short, rounded course first. There's so many. I mean, with IOSH as well, there's so many different um, courses available, different resources available just to even touch on them. And you do kind of find an area that you go, oh, I have an interest here. And then you just run with it, grab it, and go, start with that one. Um, for me, it's hands-on experience. As I go, I start finding areas I like to work in. At the moment, it's environmental. I've slowly move my way across into sustainability and environmental. So that's why I'm back in doing the master's in that area now as well.
Yeah. And I think to close again on self-awareness, when you know what you want to do and where you're going, then it can help you with that choice. And I know we've had other questions today, and we will respond to you after the event. I'll be emailing anyone who didn't get answered today, hopefully with some useful information. But we have come to the end of our time today, and thank you very much for those who have joined us and stayed on the call. And I'd like to finish on a quote that is commonly attributed to Einstein, and I'm hoping it will inspire you to go away and maybe try something new in your job search or in your career. And it's simply that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And hopefully today you've discovered something new you want to try to either improve your employability or to engage further with your membership. You'll be asked to rate the webinar. It will have popped up, and we'd be really grateful for your feedback. If you have any questions after today that you think of, then please email careerhub@iosh.com, or you can find us on LinkedIn. There's a Future Leaders community steering group kind of engaged LinkedIn group. We also have an online community for members where they can engage with the Future Leaders group. And as I said, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or email me with any questions. So thank you very much, Julianne, and everyone behind the scenes who's helped with the webinar, and to the attendees, and have an excellent rest of the week.